And welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy, Mark, and Burke talking about movies and TV shows.
Burke has his like FM announcer voice going on. Hello.
Here's some
Welcome to
smooth jazz. Grover Washington Jr. and Bill Withers.
Mark has his blue light, like he's like a blue note jazz musician.
Exactly. Yeah.
You'd have to see that on YouTube if you're listening. So I'd suggest everyone go to YouTube so they can see Mark.
I want you to put on your headphones and listen to the stereo separation of that saxophone, ladies and gentlemen.
It's like Johnny Fever here from
Johnny Fever.
Oh my God.
Well,
okay.
Well, we're going back to the 70s because we're talking
70s rock.
FM music was that was when FM was rocking. When just
and I'm wearing a shirt from the 70s. I mean, it wasn't from the 70s, but it's about the 70s. It's Quint.
Is that your
Jaws?
Shirley? Oh, okay. I
Quint
have my
from
big,
Jaws.
I have my big L on my shirt from Laverne and Shirley, but for loser. You know.
We are going for the 70s.
But this go ahead, Burke. Sorry.
Oh, you can intro it.
Okay.
Intro, Mark.
Well, this is an 8-part series that's on Netflix that was produced by BBC One, and it's currently streaming on Netflix, called The Serpent, and it's set in the 70s. You know, it's kind of all over the place with the years, but it's all in the 70s, and it's about a real life character by the name of Charles Sobhraj. And let's watch the trailer first so you get a little taste of what it's about, then we'll get into it.
All right.
Roll tape.
I've been good to you. And you understand why it's hard for me to accept that you just want to leave. Our home is always open to friends.
Who is your guest, Ajay?
Oh, you're the gem dealer.
He is the gem dealer. My husband, Alain.
Authorities began their case to extradite him.
We have a network of careers throughout Asia and Western Europe.
Which is how you're able to offer such attractive prices.
To France. To France. To France.
What's wrong with us?
To France.
I'm looking for 2 backpackers. I work for the Dutch embassy. Their families haven't heard from them in over 2 months. I have letters they wrote home in which they both describe meeting a French gem dealer based out of Bangkok.
Do they name this French gem dealer?
No, but if this killer is not found, people are in danger. What is my risk next to that?
What is your risk?
See, this is what he does. He robs, kills, forges victims' passports.
He's the man known as the Serpent, Asia's most notorious killer.
You are a killer too. Nobody has ever caught me. I expected to feel great guilt. I did not. I felt free.
All right.
Pretty cool trailer.
That's a really cool trailer. It's just gorgeous series. I just love just looking at it. It was exotic. It was the 70s, the fashion, everything about this movie. I was just all over it.
Yeah.
Our show wasn't even a movie. It was like an 8-hour movie, but it was still really fun.
Yeah.
Well,
it has the vibe of a movie, like so many series now.
It's very epic.
Yeah.
And also, for me, I didn't know any of the actors. Maybe you knew, seen a few of these in various films. It's mostly British or European actors.
Yeah. Well,
so
Jenna Coleman, who played the main character, was in Doctor Who. She was a companion for. I think she has the distinction of being the longest running companion in Doctor Who. The reboot.
Wow, gotcha.
So I know her from that.
And Tahar Rahim, who plays Charles Sobhraj. I've never seen him before, but he's very enigmatic. Oh. He's really great in this.
Really great.
And so I liked it because I didn't know a lot of the actors. So you don't have that comfortable sense of this person's going to be sort of, okay in this story because they're the stars. You just don't know what's going to happen. So there's a great feel of, for me, a sense of place and time, but also like who knows what's going to happen here.
So this is a true crime dramatization. It's it's amazing that I'm a true crime. Well, I hate saying true crime fan, but I watch a lot of true crime. I know a lot about killers.
Aficionado.
I had never heard of this guy, and considering how prolific he was, and the massive range of his murders, like how did this guy just now come to prominence? Like I was shocked when I watched him. Like, how come I've never heard of this guy? He was out, he operated like in this mid-70s. His con was he would present as like this kind of successful gem dealer, but then he basically was poisoning and robbing these tourists on like Hippie Road or whatever, like these kind of travelers who come to these really cheap places to just hang out and do drugs and have fun and be hippies, and he would be and I thought it was kind of funny they would trust him because he wasn't a hippie at all. Like he was kind of corporate looking, kind of like straight laced, but he'd say, yeah, come back to my place, and they'd be like, sure. And I'm like, why would you trust this guy? He seems like he's the antithesis of what you are.
But you think in late 60s, early 70s, and I traveled through Europe in the early 80s. I went to hostels, and you're always looking, if you have no money, you're always looking for a helping hand. I mean, in the early 80s, I would go to a train station. I would look for people to stay with them. Can you imagine that? Like,
oh my
God, this guy probably seemed like the groovy Hugh Hefner type guy.
Yeah, he did. He really
knew everything. It's like, I can show you around Bangkok, and
I'll show you all the cool party places. My house always open. The pool, parties all night long. Come and do drugs and have fun.
And he was a good-looking guy, and he had a good-looking girlfriend. So they were just kind of a hip couple, and they spoke English. They spoke a lot of different languages. So it was like very welcoming for some travelers who, whatever they plan on doing, I'll stay with this guy for a couple of days, and then it turns into a trap, turns into a prison, And
also it's that classic thing that law enforcement has, and this happens with like sex workers too, is like they just didn't take the murder of hippies seriously, number one.
Right.
Number two, they feel like, hey, they're not from here. It's not really our problem if your American tourist is missing and now found murdered. They don't really take it seriously. And they feel like these people are living high risk, it's high risk going into these places and just trusting people. It was really sad. So you have to wonder how many serial killers went undiscovered during this time.
I think he was exploiting that because they were a great resource of, part of the reason he was doing it was to get their information, their identification, so that he could travel with their passports,
right,
and make these illegal, gem deals and foreign sort of smuggling type things that he was into.
Yeah.
And that's a great plot, if you can steal somebody's ID, because back in those days, it was before cell phones, and people who were traveling in Asia like that, backpacking through Asia, it was expected that you probably wouldn't hear from them for a month or something, or a couple of weeks would go by. And by then the trail goes cold. It's not like now, if somebody disappeared while they were traveling, their friends and family would notice a lack of posts on Instagram today. What the hell's wrong? And but back then,
connected back then.
Yeah, that was a good resource of those kind of victims, these people that wouldn't be missed right away.
Yeah, and it was all word of mouth. Like you couldn't Google and research the safest places or where to stay or, tips on how to travel. Everybody was just winging it. And being, like you said, very trusting of like, everybody's cool and we're just having fun. And, 90% of the time that's probably true. And then once in a while you run into this kind of guy who is not advert. And it was so petty. Like he's killing these poor people in horrible way, poison, horrible, sick. God, talk about vomit. Whew, so much vomit in this show. But he was killing him in these horrible ways for how much? Like a few $100s, like traveler's checks. It was
mostly for their IDs, though. I think mostly for the identification that he could use,
and also the sense I think he felt like he could do anything. He had this godlike complex, like he could take these people out and do make people do stuff like pour gasoline on them and light the match and burn up the bodies.
Well, he was definitely like he was always like, I will always be free was his big comment. Like I will he's escaped from prison when he was caught. He knew the police and he was able to kind of con them into letting him go. So he just thought he was invincible. And he was very cocky. But he had also, his henchmen. He had, was her name Monique or no Marie, who was helping him on the side, like kind of. And to me, that sort of was also the having a woman partner helps, I think, put people at ease.
Right. Yeah. And
right back.
Okay. Oh,
Kathy's got a doorbell.
She's got dominoes coming in for.
She actually has a ding dong doorbell. It doesn't make any kind of funny horror noise. You'd expect Kathy to have a doorbell that would scream,
or like the Ring or Nest things are dong ding. There's all this different stuff. This is our old school doorbell.
Yeah.
Did you get the dominoes with the extra pepperoni?
Yeah, so I gotta eat,
We were talking about your doorbell. You have such a middle of the road ding dong.
I know, it's
doorbell.
the Ring. The Ring just has this little teep.
Yeah,
I know,
okay.
and we actually connected the Ring to the doorbell that came with the anyway. There was this guy at the door and he wanted to give me poison. I was like, okay.
Now since you watch this show, to avoid that.
Yes.
We are.
Do not trust people selling gems. That was another weird thing. What a weird job. It just seemed like an odd job to have as sort of your front of like a gem dealer. Just seemed really odd to me. Like
He was a gem dealer. I mean,
I know, but it was a weird, like you're a gem dealer, yet you're still like killing these people for their petty traveler's checks. It was just odd.
For their ID. For their
ID and
traveler's
checks.
For the ability to go to different countries and make deals, illegal deals. I think that was the primary motivation, was just to get these, these identification packages that he could use and become another person. I don't think I think, the hippies are not going to be a big resource of money. They were just simply, exploited as a resource for their identification.
And he would hide those passports or lock them up in a safe, and then he would use them, and they're stuck in this apartment complex, kind of an odd apartment complex house.
Yeah.
But I think, for him, the gems, like, one big deal, one huge deal would, it was always like, hey, then we can finally get out and move and start a new life.
Right.
So with gems,
the classic.
Yeah.
The classic, we'll do one more big job and then we'll get out and we'll go.
And
clean.
I think deep down he was, considering he was a serial killer, I think deep down those were his motivations for his get off on actually killing these people. I think that was,
his power.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, there were those great creepy scenes of him going, like you'd see through a doorway. And he's kind of sitting on the bed and you could just barely see like the camera through the door, and he's kind of leaning over them while they're in the bed. And he's just kind of like, in a way, kind of enjoying their slow, horrible, painful death.
Yeah.
It was really, but that's one aspect. The other aspect is how great this thing looked, and the locations, and like when he's not killing people, super charming, creepy charming, like very compelling actor. And you're like, you could see yourself kind of falling for his line because he just seems so confident and so smooth, but so cool and exotic. Yet that worked against him because he felt like people were racist and hated him because he was half Vietnamese.
Right. Well,
so
I thought
like that.
I thought it was very seductive. The music, the feel, the fashion. You're getting seduced into that lifestyle. Well, I wish I was in Bangkok in 1976. And sort of experiencing that. It looks like really fun. It looks like it's sort of a great place to hang out.
And the thing about people like that is that you do run across unusual people in other countries. My wife and I actually have a really good friend that we've known for years and years now that we just met in the streets in a country that we were visiting, in a weird situation where we were like, should we trust this person? Because it was just one of those, hi, where are you from? And then we were talking, and then we went to dinner, and then every time we go back to this country, we see them and we still talk on the phone. It's like we keep up with them. And I think, we're sort of unusual too, so,
well,
but you do run into unusual people when you travel, and it's not unexpected that you might find a gem dealer in Bangkok or someone with a strange
gem dealer,
like a strange career that
that's
you've never.
Kind of part of the fun thing about traveling. You meet people, and you're like, I never would have met this person if I didn't go to Bangkok or Paris or whatever. So it's,
and really your chances are really small that you're going to run into a serial killer anyway. But
that's the thing,
thank God for is it Kippenberger or Kippenberg?
Herman Nippenberg.
Nippenberg. Oh my God! Thank God for this guy who latched on to the murder of some Dutch citizens
Yeah, he was a Dutch diplomat.
And he was obsessed with figuring this out. And
Yeah.
he was following this thing all the way through. It was ruining his relationship. It was ruining his job. I mean, you see that, and he really didn't get much credit at the time. You know, he was always getting written out of the story. And I'm glad that the show kind of brought him to prominence as being kind of the hero of the piece, because he had to convince so many different police forces in different countries to cooperate with each other to get this guy. Because no one ever believed it was the same guy for some reason, even though he looked so completely unique. So weird.
It's so difficult in countries like Bangkok. As much as I love the location because I love Bangkok. I love Thailand. They shot it apparently in Bangkok and Hua Hin, which is another place I've been and spent a bunch of time. And I just love that country. I love Bangkok. I love the people. But there was back then probably even more, but there still is a lot of corruption in the police and the governments and stuff. But the police, it's one of those countries where you can pay your way out of something, and they'll not see something that's happening, and it's horrible and sad. And that's another thing that, no matter what country you go to, as much as you love that country, there's problems. There's going to be problems under the surface.
Yeah.
And, but I do have to say that I love Bangkok. I loved seeing Bangkok in this movie because my wife grew up in Bangkok. So she was recognizing, she's like, oh, I know where that is. I know where that is. I know where that is.
Right.
And I loved how they brought in archival footage and then kind of seamlessly wove it in, and you'd see them kind of develop out of it. It was so cool.
Yeah. So you could tell that's definitely 70s stuff, and then they would widen out, and then it would be the production.
Yeah. And sometimes I couldn't tell the difference almost. They were doing it so well. So I really enjoyed that.
They really nailed that, because a lot of times when I watch these period things, I'm always looking for the Lexus in the corner or something, or some some
cell phone tower
anachronistic thing. Yeah, but they, I'm sure it was there, but they did a hell of a job of sort of, keeping you away from that. It was really good. And I'll just, Nippenberg was played by this English actor, Billy Howell. I thought he was great.
Yeah, so good.
I thought he was. I mean, I think everybody's good in this.
Everybody was good in this movie.
Yeah, and they're mostly British actors. Ellie Bamber plays Angela Nippenberg, his wife, and she's really good. And a guy who played Ajay.
He was great.
Good.
Excellent. Amesh Edurwira. I'm sure that's wrong, but he was just creepy and
creepy, but also sort of likable.
Yeah, you like the guy.
Yeah, that's what they crossed that line of making these people likable. As much as they were creepy and you hated them, you still were sort of drawn to them.
Yeah, and
even the short time that you'd see these victims, like the victims were very vivid. They did a really good job on humanizing them, and you remembered them or recognized them. Even if they were only in the show briefly to show as like a victim who's sick and dying, it's like you get to see them for a brief second. This is my last night of freedom. I'm going to be like a nun tomorrow, or that one girl was
literally going to move to a convent and become a nun.
I think my only quibble with the entire thing was the weird jumping back and forth in time. I thought it was kind of needlessly confusing, because they would show present day and they'd go back. Then they'd show like 3 months later, 2 months later, 4 months. And I was like, wait, what? It got very disorienting. So I just kind of eventually decided I'm just going to let it go and not worry about the time frame anymore, because it was very confusing.
I felt the same way. Because when they would do 3 months earlier, they would use those old sort of, you saw them at airports or train stations, the old flipping of the letters, which I love. I've always loved
love that.
Things. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So that's what they would say, like 2 months later or 6 months forward, whatever. And at first I was like, my God, they're doing this like every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it was like crazy. But then like maybe in episode 3, I totally got into it. Yeah. And I kind of saw what they were doing, because they were going back in time and seeing it from a different character's perspective.
Yeah.
So you get to see. So then I totally loved it. But the first couple of episodes, I'm saying, boy, this seems a little bit overkill to me.
Well, because you had to really grasp on like the orientation of where it's 3 weeks from when, and you had to find your center point. And so it took me a while to figure out the center point of like 6 months later, 2 years earlier, 2 years. You had to figure out what center point they were actually operating from, because the people didn't look that different. Yeah. So when you're watching it, you can't tell like, oh, it was so many years he was, a different place or had a beard. There was no telling anyone apart at that point.
To me, it was like procedural. It's the way you solve a crime. And it's the process that you use to solve a crime. You get little bits of information here and there. It's not always chronological. And I kind of like the way that they put they assembled it in a way that you had these two opposing timelines. You had the before timeline, and then you had the after timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain point in there where they meet, and it's creepy. It's kind of scary when you're in the sort of present day in your mind, and those older scenes take place in flashbacks in your mind, in your movie raised mind.
Mm-hmm.
But in the film, you're thinking of those flashbacks as being a different time. And then there's that one scene where they collide, where the bad guy actually steps into the present day in a really threatening way. And I thought that was a really brilliant build up to that moment where where the timelines crossed, and you were like, holy crap, he's alive and he's right here, right now.
And all of a sudden Nippenberg, who, it was kind of in the present, is like now dealing, and his friend is dealing with
he's in the world with him now, and the timeline with him. They've converged.
Yeah,
that was cool. And Richard Warlow was the showrunner, and Hans Herbo and Tom Shanklin were the two directors. And just a shout out to those guys. It was really like well sort of put together.
Yeah, I guess they've been working on this for years. Like I think I was reading they started like around 2014 to try and pull this thing together. And then they kept adding people and trying, because I mean this was an ambitious project. Not only was it a serial killer no one had heard of, they had to deal with like going back in time and in other countries.
And I
mean, so much going on.
Other part about the sort of the timeline is the very first couple of minutes of the series in episode 1 is an interview with him, I think from 1989. So that he's a free man because he's out, he's being interviewed, and so you go, okay, in your head
that was disturbing the whole time.
You're going
remembering that.
Like you're going, he's going to get through, he's going to get away with it, And then of course it sort of catches up to, and then it kind of goes from there. I won't spoil what happens, but it's just interesting with the time stuff. They really, after initially going, I don't know if that works for me, it was great. And what Burke said, perfect. It's sort
you
of
just have to kind of let it wash over you a little bit till you kind of get your bearings. But it does take, it took me a couple episodes to finally go, okay, I think I'm getting this now.
And getting into the location, and I keep going back to the fact that it was actually shot in Thailand, but I think that's really impressive. I mean, they could have done it on sound stages here in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And, Thai people would say that's not Thailand. But you could have, because you can kind of get away with that environment here in LA. You got the sort of tropical kind of vibe, but the fact that they shot in Thailand really gives it a flavor. And if you've been there, you're like, God, I recognize the way the sidewalks are paved. Those paving tiles on the sidewalk, and the
great sign of its house. That sign. They kept going to that sign. That's
the way it was made.
Sign. Yeah.
Is cut out with a router, and you see those kind of signs is cut out of like teak wood with a router. You see those everywhere in Thailand, and the tuk-tuks and the motor scooters and the busy streets and all the wires, those wires overhead. And
it already looks retro. You don't even have to try that hard.
Well, so much of Thailand is still, I mean, it still looks, especially Hua Hin. I told you guys about this, but my wife and I went to Hua Hin on our honeymoon, which is where they shot a bunch of this movie. And I think the reason is because when you go to Hua Hin, you're stepping back in time. In certain areas of it, it's unchanged. I mean, I was thinking like the 1930s, the train station there, the train itself, the interior of the train, you could totally shoot in those places and not have to do a whole lot of digital erasing of cell phone towers or things like that, or ads for Netflix movies. It's a lot of places in Thailand still have an old vibe. They haven't, certain areas, of course, in Bangkok that are super modern, like more modern than we've seen. But there are certainly plenty of places. And I guess making the decision to shoot it there was probably one of those things they probably had to really fight for. It's like, no, we want to move the whole crew, a whole production. We want to get the rights to shoot. We want to get permits and everything in Thailand, which has sort of notoriously corrupt police system. And we're doing a show that sort of talks about how corrupt the police are and how dangerous it is to travel to Thailand. And the film industry there is also not completely squeaky clean.
Well, they pulled it off.
Yeah.
Well, they shot there, and then COVID hit, and they had to stop the production, and then they finished it in the UK. So I'm not, maybe they were lucky enough that they could just, fake the rest of it, or maybe it was a lot of,
true, yeah,
interior stuff or something. So, but it comes off seamless. You never go. That doesn't feel like Thailand to me.
It was funny to me too. Like I always wonder about the motivation of the passive partner of somebody like this, like Marie, who meets this man and falls in love with him, though he treated her so badly.
Yeah.
Not only did he treat her badly, like he came on to her really strong, and they had all these really like these love letters that were super passionate, and then she got there and he wouldn't even sleep with her. Like she was freaking out about it, and so he just totally she felt very rejected by him. Then that continued through the entire relationship, where he would like constantly like draw her into these terrible things he's doing, and then make her feel like it was her fault somehow that she was involved, and he would constantly abusing her. And I see this, and you go, why would somebody allow themselves to be partner to something like this cruel? And yet she just sort of pretended like, yeah, I'm giving them medicine, knowing in the back of her mind that this is a poison, this was making these people sick and dying. And I it's just when her eventual like light bulb going off when she sees him for who he is, when they're at their bottom of the high times, when they're trying to escape and they're on the run, and they're in just these like hanging out in these like, I don't know what, like kind of flop houses, and just the work. And he goes, "Don't worry, we're going to Paris." And it's like, I'm not going to believe you anymore. And finally, but even then, after that, they're both in jail, and she's still barely almost hanging on, but she finally turns on him. But this was years of abuse, years of this manipulation. And it's like, man, and she thought, and you see the photos of them, and she just thinks, I'm like Bonnie and Clyde. We're so cool. Not cool, man.
Yeah.
Not cool at all.
Well, there's a moment in the film in the series that I really liked, where in another film it would have been her enlightening moment, where she's kind of coming to her senses when she meets a hitchhiker and is talking about, and they're talking about, I can't remember where they are. I think they're in India, and they're talking about the little princess girl that appears in the window, and there's a ritual, ritual ceremony. And there's a tourist, I believe she's like an American tourist, and she's there talking about this. And you see the character, Marie, kind of, you assume that she's getting her strength, and she's finally realizing this is a bad way to be. But then the moment that she sees that this other character has a source of something that she wants, suddenly she says, "Oh, I want you to meet somebody." She's like lures her right into the web, and you realize, wow, she's not a good person.
And I think her as the partner is what kind of let people have their guard down, because I thought, well, here's this nice woman, and they're so glamorous. There's no way they would be dangerous. I mean, they're both so successful, and there's a woman here. How can anything go bad? And that was, there was part of the honey trap.
There was Nadine and her husband, who were always at the pool, and they were like cool, normal people. And they start, so they were living there for a long time, and they finally think, what's going on here? And
I thought she was nuts.
Yeah, Nadine.
She took she almost aggravated me how dumb she was.
The chances that she took, the risks.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. It was like, thank God. But at the same time, like she was searching the apartment, and then AJ would come in, and she didn't have a good cover story, and she was so bad at it. And then they'd say, you need to get away from that. No, I'm going back. I'm like, why? I know. And then when they run into her at the post office.
Right.
And she could easily have walked away from that, and she didn't. And I was just like, why is this woman so dumb? It was making me a little nuts.
Do you think that was easy for her to walk away? I thought that she had no choice.
All she could do is say, well, it's been great seeing you. I have to go run some other errands. I mean, there were a million ways of not getting a car with them. I mean, there was no reason.
But don't you think that they knew that she knew that, like,
but it didn't matter.
She wanted them to not suspect her. So she felt like if I leave, they might suspect me more. But if I go with them, they're not going to suspect me, because Why would I go with them if I suspected them, you know? And she knew them too. That's the other
but
thing.
You still could be not putting yourself at risk by going off and doing other things you were doing that day. You didn't have to just follow him into their car from the post
But it was
office.
also exciting for her. I think she was bored out of her mind.
It made me nuts. Yeah. I hated that.
And I think she liked being a spy.
Oh, she definitely was getting off on it for sure. Yeah. And she put herself
the thing is, she knew them. She kind of, I think when you know people, you know, we're looking at them as characters in a movie. We know what they've done and know what they can do. But she, you know, in reality, she knew these people, and she probably felt like I can see through them a little bit. I know where they are, and I know what they do. And she might have felt encouraged or empowered by the fact that she maybe felt safe because they were such good friends, you know,
even though you're spying on them because, you know, they're killing like dozens of people. So you feel safe with them. That's just, I don't know. She took some unnecessary risks to me that didn't need to be had. And that everything that happened afterwards could have happened without her actually almost getting killed.
Yeah.
but maybe it's like, you know, who knows how much, you know, that character really was there, if that was a, you know, a fictional made up character. But for Marie, she could have backed off a lot of times too. She could have left, but she never
She was in his thrall though.
She was but
a passive abused woman who felt like she couldn't live without him, that she
didn't really have anywhere to go. Right.
And her family kind of written her off because she was with this con man. And so
I just felt it was realistic that people do things that
it's very realistic, but also very aggravating. Why? I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying irritating how dumb people can be.
I thought even the supporting characters, everybody had was really they were full characters. Like that guy Paul, who was sort of like the bald guy, the guy, I think he was German maybe, who was like Nippenberg.
Oh, he was great.
Like the guy, who was wanted to go in there and just shoot him. He's like,
let's just shoot him.
Yeah. I was like, let's follow his orders. I'm ready
for the people that wouldn't have
one
died
episode
if he'd done that. Like, you know, if he'd just gone off and shot the guy, how many people would have been saved?
Yeah.
But I thought it was a little bit I think betrayed a little bit of is it Nippenberg? Kippenberg. The Dutch
Herman.
I say Nippenberg.
That, you know, his like drive, you feel like a little bit to get significance from this case. Like he felt it made him important, that he's like, you know, I still believe we did the right thing, even though dozens of people died, that I didn't let you shoot him. It's like, really? You can't just back off of it for 1 second, you know?
Like you can't just go in there blasting because you might be wrong. You know,
he was trying to do it by the book.
He was doing it by the book.
He was a diplomat. I'm going to do this, you know, the law, but he's doing it in kind of a country that lawlessness is there, you know, it's part of it. So it's not the Netherlands, you know, it's a different place.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's 8 episodes. I feel if my quibble is they could have maybe lopped off an episode
or two.
I felt a little bit at the end like it was kind of stretchy a little bit.
Repetitive. I mean, still, like, it was just so beautiful to watch, and like I said, the lead, he was so compelling that you keep watching it. But I feel like we were getting a little bit competitive, a little repetitive. Even though I have to say, what my favorite stuff was when he completely goes off the rails and escalates to like his big score of killing a bunch of people all at the same time.
Yeah,
insane, right. So crazy. I loved that. But I think an episode or two before that could have gone. Yeah, it was almost too meticulous and following the evidence, almost too much. But it's still just so fun to watch. I didn't really care that it was.
The truth is stranger than fiction. It just feels like, boy, there's so many twists and turns, but it's based on a true story, a real person. You know,
that's a problem when you fictionalize a true story. Sometimes there's things that you're like, we can't put this thing that actually happened in our story because it's too absurd. Right. You know, we have to change it in a way that makes it more believable than it was, than it actually was. It's funny with a thing like this when you watch the show and then you go, you get online and you start reading about this guy, and there's things they left out of the story that they left it out because it would have been too like that couldn't have happened.
I know, that's great. I will, put out the animal alert that there is a very sad monkey death in it, which wasn't cool and unnecessary, and then the dog didn't die, which I liked. We weren't sure what happened to the dog, but I was worried about the dogs. They kept passing it around. It was a weird plot point that they kept passing this dog back and forth.
The little,
but it didn't die, so I was glad for that, because he could have easily have done that to teach somebody a lesson, which would have been something he would do, but he didn't do that.
And I really liked the lead, Tahar Rahim.
Oh, so good.
A French actor, French Algerian actor. And I've never seen him before, but he was, kind of a master of disguise, the way he looked and the way he looks in real life. You go, boy, that's the same person, so.
And just, I loved his
really
tempered.
good. He played it really understated too.
Yes,
I
I was gonna
think
say
he wasn't broad and evil, or unrealistically gregarious or whatever. He didn't overdo that that thing. He was just this presence in the film that I thought was very believable as a person, as a real type of person.
Yeah, I loved his sort of very silky smooth, very middle of the road, always in control, so that when he had these little moments where the veneer would crack a little bit, it was very like it felt very profound, because you knew that him showing any kind of emotion like that was a big deal. So when you see this actor kind of just this little bit of, freaking out a little bit, whether he was stabbing victims when he lost his shit doing that, or, when they're finally, zeroing in on him and he's kind of losing his, control a little bit at the end. It's like, that was so much more effective because he was so cool and collected the whole time, which even made him more compelling. Like, I totally fell in love with this guy. I totally would have been victim. Totally.
You would never made it to
Kathmandu. Never got to my destination. I'd be this hippie that would go, "Oh my God, he's so cute." How can he be bad? He's so cute.
It's well worth your time. 8 episodes, Netflix, The Serpent, BBC One production with a co-production with Netflix. So they actually put up a lot of the money. So
very very handsome production. Yes, highly recommended.
Yeah. And I've probably spent more time, and in fact, I know I have spent more time in Thailand than any other country I've ever been to outside of America.
I've spent 0 in Thailand, but it's on my list.
It's definitely got to be on your list.
It's on my list.
And I could show you around.
I know. We'll have to do a joint trip, big family trip.
I'll show you some of those gem places.
Show me some gem dealers and some of those great party places.
Yeah.
There's also another really good Thai film directed by Burke Saul. It's called Wires. And
we should post that on our YouTubes.
I watched it again. I say that because I watched it recently and I went, damn it, this is really good.
We'll put it on a playlist because we can access it through Burke's channel. So we'll get it up there.
For our listeners, it's a little film that my wife and I made that every once in a while when we go somewhere, you have a film production studio in your phone, right? But I actually took a nice camera and I thought, you know what, I should write a little story, like a real simple, scary, twisty story, sci-fi kind of thing, and something that doesn't have any dialogue, so we don't have to worry about sound, and then something I can do special effects on and do what I do. And I coaxed my long-suffering wife into being the actress in it.
Yeah, she's long-suffering.
And she did. We were out pretty late, and we went to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. We shot some in Bangkok, so some of the similar locations to The Serpent. But I love the idea of making a little film and taking advantage of a location while you're on vacation. Smart. And if you're so inclined to make, tell little stories, and I'm always telling people, there's no excuse for not telling your stories. If you are a writer or write screenplays or have story ideas and you have a cell phone, you can shoot your little movies if you want to.
Soderbergh did. He shot an entire film on an iPhone.
So I tried to figure out if I could do it. Like I keep saying, you can, and you can, and
Excellent.
It takes some doing, but it's fun. It's not the greatest little movie, of course.
Oh, stop it.
We shot it for 0 baht, and
you didn't get paid scale.
Not even favored nations. But it's real. I mean, we'll put a link on it on our YouTube channel.
It'll be on a playlist.
our playlist, absolutely.
We can share it.
Burke is
Okay.
being a little humble there.
Far too modest.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
That's
it's a weird.
So watch
little
The Serpent,
story, but-
then watch Wires.
it's a good Thai
Yeah.
double feature.
You'll be totally intrigued by Thailand by the time you're done. You're like, I want to know more about this place.
Yeah.
One is 458 minutes. The other one's about 3 minutes.
It's about 3 minutes.
Exactly.
One episode,
One episode, one actor. Done.
one performer. Yeah.
All right.
One camera
Well-
operator. There was one crew. Actually, Mew's sister helped us for one shot. So I
Okay.
gave her credit just so there would be 3 names in the credit.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
I remember
that's
seeing
good.
that name.
So you had a crew member and an actor and a director. That's excellent.
Yeah.
And please don't forget to subscribe.
Subscribe.
To our little channel, and please like and comment. And if you have any questions or comments, please, let us know and we'll address them.
That scared me. I'm awake now.
Get the defibrillator.
All right, everybody. Watch The Serpent. Let us know what you thought.
Yes.
Tell us
Yeah.
in the comments. Tell us.
Leave a comment down there and tell us if you've been to Thailand, if you got the vibe, if you've had the feeling that like, wow, that really, really
Yeah.
is definitely shot there. It has a feel of the place. Everybody's all sweaty. That's another thing you'll find when you go to
Also,
go
if you're a gem dealer, be sure and comment how accurate that was.
yeah, or if you're a Thai police person, tell us if there really is
Yes.
corruption or not.
Yeah, let us know if that was correct.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments.
That's your corrupt government.
If you're a corrupt police officer, please let us know. Tell us how it works.
We're
If
starting
you
stuff.
knew the serial killer, please tell us your stories.
Yeah.
We just got a comment from Interpol.
Yeah.
Interpol wants to talk to us now.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Now we've
all
done
right.
it.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. and
Thanks for
watching.
listening.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.